Welcome to Imaginative Visions Journeys, where creators from the entertainment world discuss their journey to turning their dreams into reality. With your host, Justin D. Williams.
Quick intro. Welcome to Imaginative Visions Journeys. Justin here, back with another episode, and we're also going to be putting this on the tacosandgeeks.com. And we got another great guest today. We're going to have Bervi Adams here to talk about her new book, Night Tastings. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
And let's just kick this off. And as always, for our first question, we always like to discuss origins and the humble beginnings. And can you tell us a little bit about the concept of the book and what inspired you to write it?
Well, I started writing this book several years ago, and it just was this thing that just kept coming to me. And it was actually, I just had to pull over when I was driving, or it would wake me up. I just love vampire stories. I'm a big Anne Rice fan. And this story just came to me. So I finally just sat down and I just started writing and writing and writing. And when I got done, I had 330,000 words.
Wow.
So it's actually a trilogy. And Night Tastings, I have the book right here. This is, I can't see it, but there you go.
There we go.
It's the first in the trilogy. And like I said, all three of them are already written. But this is the first one that's out.
And this is a story that takes place within the 1930s, and it's focusing on Nikolai, I believe.
Yes. Well, actually, yeah. Nikolai Razumovsky is the protagonist. He's the main character. And it actually starts in 1857 in Russia.
Okay.
And it ends up going all the way through up until the 1990s, and they end up living in Napa Valley. So it's but it's about Nikolai and how he builds his family. They're not vampires to begin with. He has a fall from grace at one point in the story, fairly early on in the story, and he has this fall from grace, so they know they can't go back to Russia. He has this fall from grace in New Orleans on Mardi Gras, and they have to figure out a way to survive, to keep, to go on. They know they can't go home. So he and his new wife, her name is Tatianya, they end up going out to Napa Valley. So it starts out in Russia, and when they get married, then they go all through Europe. She's the daughter of a duke, so they go through all the, the houses in Europe. And at one particular house in Paris, Nikolai is given this thought that he just can't let go of, that he could get greater powers from a vampire, not necessarily becoming a vampire, that he could get this, what they call a searing. And it's just where they bestow powers, but they're not actually turned into vampires. But of course, he's duped. And when they go to New Orleans on the eve of Mardi Gras, he goes to one of these parties that he thought he was just going to get a searing, and he ends up actually becoming a vampire. And the way they become a vampire, I called it a restoration. And he has that, and then his wife, unfortunately, is also turned into a vampire, so they know they can't go back to Russia as vampires. And he ends up deciding that they're going to go out to California. They settle in San Francisco, and then he decides that he wants to have a vineyard. So they end up having the N&T vineyards, and it's so it's kind of like their names are Nikolai and Tatianya, and then the name of the book is Night Tasting. So there's a little bit of a play on the N&T.
Oh, I was about to ask, but that was actually going to be my next question of how did you come up with the title of Night Tasting without, giving spoilers?
Right. Well, the Night Tastings kind of came from the fact that, vampires traditionally do their tasting, their feedings at night. So that's kind of where it started coming from. But then also there's a lot of things out at vineyards that have to happen at night. Like a lot of times grapes are harvested at night because that's when the sugars are preserved better at night. So there's some of that. You know, and then there also is a little bit about it's an adult book, you know, in a lot of ways. So things happen at night.
Yeah, of course.
So it's a little bit of like a triple entendre there. You know, so that's where it came from. And it was funny. It was like I actually painted a picture years ago when I was out at a spa in Arizona, and I painted a picture with the N and the T. I was just kind of playing around with the idea, and it never really like dawned on me till afterwards that, oh yeah, it's Nikolai and Tatianya, night tasting, N and T. So kind of like went together nicely. So but that was kind of like a fluke, not intended, but it was good. So.
And you alluded to that you wrote it as 3 books. Now, what was like, how long the whole process did it take you to complete this entire saga?
Well, once I decided, it took a few months till I really decided to sit down and take this serious, because I actually I know writing a book and trying to get a book published it's a tough road, you know.
Right.
And at first I thought, I don't know if I want to go down that road. But I just have always loved writing, even as a kid, you know, I just always loved writing. You know, it came to me easily. You know, I have several other projects in the works also now. So I just enjoy the process. So once I decided to do that, I was put it off for a few months. I'd say writing the whole thing took me about a half a year, but like not like, you know, like I was working, you know, I had kids, you know, like, so it's not like, you know, it wasn't like, you know, like 9 to 5 that I was writing. So what I would do is every night I would start to write, you know, after the day was done. And what I did was I need to be organized. So I would I started out with a very rough outline. And then I just kind of like would like fix the outline as I would go along, you know, like do an adjusting. But what I did do was every night before I finished, I made sure I had checked off all the things that I had said for the night before. And then I set for the next night, you know, what my like tasks were. I would look at what that next chapter was going to be. And then I would make sure that, you know, I you know, took care of all those tasks. And I just kept going until, you know, I felt that I had gotten to the end. And actually, when I got towards the end of the book, a character came to my mind, and she plays a significant part towards the end. And there actually could possibly be a 3rd book around her, because there's so much information I just keep thinking about with her. So I've been taking notes and just kind of like, you know, just keeping these thoughts, you know, in a folder, you know, and just jotting down little things as I go. And these things just came to me, you know, just came to me. So.
And that's one thing I always hear from writers, is that you at least have to write at least something, like even if it's just an idea, every day when it comes to towards your project. And
Right.
you just definitely solidified that, like, you at least took out, obviously you have work, you have kids, and you still took the time to at least write something.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And,
Exactly.
and let's talk a little bit about the journey, as you said, of the difficulties of getting published and doing that whole. Can you describe a little bit, because I believe this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is your first book.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is. It is my first book. And I had written the book and I just didn't know what to do with it. And I had just put it aside. And then, as you saw, my husband was there. He encouraged me. He said, you should at least get the book out there and, you know, see what to do. So we sort of started investigating, and I was kind of like, I'd say nervous or, you know, hesitant to try to look for an agent. So what I did was I went through the self-publishing, you know, so I used a publisher that would work with me directly, you know, not going through the agent route. But, you know, with all this journey, it's a journey, you know, with all of this. So it's a learning journey. So at this point for the 2nd book, I am going to, you know, look for an agent, because I do think there's so much about publishing and publicity and just, you know, all of those things that I do think, you know, you do better if you're lucky enough to get an agent, you know, but it is nice to be able to have the option of doing traditional, you know, non-traditional publishing, you can at least get your story out there, if you don't end up with an agent. So there's like pros and cons to both sides of things.
And that's something I also wanted to talk about too, is the fact that the way the world is now, we can just really just now go through Kindle, you have blurb.com, you have so many different avenues now. Of course, social media is such a huge thing now to just really get your stuff out there. Now, as your first book is out, is it kind of a relief that you go, it's done, it's out
Yes,
now?
it is. Yeah, it's a huge relief. Yeah, you do feel that like you accomplished something. You put your first baby out there, so to speak. And I've had not having had an agent. I'm not sure I'm getting the traction that you would with having an agent and like a big publishing house behind you and whatnot. But the people who have read it just love the story. I've even had the beta readers, people who who read it for you before you get it out there.
Yes.
I've actually had a couple of my beta readers say, like, when's the next one coming out? We're looking forward to it. And they said, we think about what is Nikolai doing? What is Tatianya doing? So it's kind of nice that like, even after they've read the story, and like weeks or months later, they're thinking about it, and that's like such, to me as a writer, that is just one of the highest compliments that like a reader can give to the writer, that the story resonated with them, so that's been very, very rewarding for me to have that happen.
And I want to talk a little bit about the choice to use vampires. What was the inspiration and just the time period alone? What influenced you to put it in that type of setting and include and use vampires as well? Were you a vampire fan? And
Yes.
If you were back in the days, who was your favorite? Or what was like the inspiration behind all that?
I've just always had a fascination with vampires. I mean, when my son was little, he would be a vampire almost every year. Sometimes he would be like Thomas Jefferson as a vampire, these kinds of crazy things like this. So the vampires were always kind of like a thing, but like not like the gore. Like I'm not like a super gory, like I don't like bloody things. Like there are a couple of scenes in here that are kind of gory. They have to be, when somebody turns into a vampire, they have to be for that. But I just loved, Anne Rice, Interview with the Vampire, that her whole, series of books. And she really, caught my attention. I met her one time years ago in Pennsylvania. It was just a very interesting, interaction, short interaction, but it made a huge impression on me. And, it's really a love story. And what it is actually, I kind of like to try to tell people that even though it's a vampire story, it's really a romance that's couched in a vampire culture, and a lot of the things that get looked at with all the different characters that are in the book, there's like just different parts of like the psychosocial aspects of just humanity. It's like, like loneliness, loss, looking for love, just all those different, things that anybody deals with, over the course of their life, but then they have this extra layer, they had just, Nikolai and Tatianya had just gotten married. They were married less than a year when this happened to them. So.
And did you have to do like just doing any type of form of research, especially since of the time period, to really capture, say that authentic time period?
Yeah, I did do some research. It's fortunate my daughter is adopted from Russia, so I did have a bit of a background about knowing about Russia. I've been to Russia, so there was just had that bit of interest there. So I think that's kind of where it naturally flowed from there. Russian names I find very interesting sounding, like just a little example that I used is like in Russia, like if a girl is born, they put an A at the last name. So like, and that's called a patronymic. So that's what I did, in this book. I use the patronymic, so it's like, so Tatyanya's father's name does not have the A on the end and hers does, and that's, something that, that they, did did in Russia, with that was that. And then I'm also a huge Jane Austen fan. So I do like, like the time periods, like a couple hundred years ago. So that just is something that has been something that I always did enjoy historical romance books. So I think that's kind of where it just kind of flowed from. I have had people actually, my book was reviewed by the Grimoire of Horror, and she actually did note that, I sound like Mary Shelley, Frankenstein.
Yes.
So, and it sounds like it was written like back in the day, so to speak. So, which is what I was trying to convey, the way they speak, the pattern of speech they use, trying to be like formal in certain ways, and so I was glad that, that does come through.
Mm. And that's something that's always been fascinating. It's like to write kind of like these time period pieces, because one, we don't have as much books like that as well that go way back. And not only that, it's in a different location, because usually we'll have a vampire be taking place here in America.
Right.
And then,
yeah, well, they end up being here, but yeah.
Yeah, they usually are here. So it's refreshing to see just like a whole different type of setting. And I guess like one of my last two final questions is first question I have to ask is, do you have a favorite character that you in the book? I know that's like picking your favorite child or anything like that, but do you have a favorite character that's more close to you? And
I do. Yeah.
And why?
It's actually Nikolai's closest childhood friend. His name is Alexei. And he is just to me, he's the most human, and he has so many things happen. He has a very tragic situation happen in about chapter 7 or 8. I don't want to spoil things, but he has just a horrible thing happen to him, but yet he is able to, be happy for Nikolai, with his newfound love. He wants to be, he wants to, remain friends with Nikolai. He actually ends up leaving Russia and going and living with them in Napa Valley, and the reason why Napa Valley ends up figuring into it, I lived for a long time in Northern California. And before I moved out there, I really wasn't much of a wine lover, and I am very much of a wine aficionado now. So that's why, the winery thing was very easy for me to write about, because I just love, wine, Napa Valley in general. I'm a big cab fan. So that's where that came from, and I spent a lot of time up there. I didn't live that far from Napa. So, I did go up there and I learned a lot. I took a class, taking some wine, classes, and, so like I have a fair amount of information about it, aside from just I like the way it tastes, so.
And I will say, like, my final question will be, what advice can you give someone who's in your position or trying to get into your position when they want to write their first book, get it published? What advice can you give them on what certain steps to take, writing process, etc.?
Right. Well, the first thing is you have to develop a thick skin, because you are going to have people who aren't going to like your style. They're not going to like your thought, what your story is going to be. Maybe they don't like the way the cadence of your wording or whatnot. So you have to know that deep down in your heart, that you're a writer, and you're a writer right away. Like I just saw recently on Twitter, somebody said, when did you know you were a writer? And I think that you just need to just keep going. Like you said, you write every day, and don't worry about it being perfect right off the bat. Just write, just do the word vomit. Sorry,
Exactly.
don't want to be gross, but just get it out there. You can always go back and clean it up. You don't even have to worry about punctuation or is it spelled right or any of that kind of stuff. Just get the thoughts down, because I got to tell you, if you have a thought and you think you'll get to it later, you're going to forget it. So when you get that thought, that's what I used to pull over. If I was driving, I would pull over And I would, even if
Oh,
I had to
wow.
write like a few words down, because then I could, no, then it was there, then you could get back to it. But a lot of times, where things would come to me at night and I thought, okay, I'll remember it in the morning. No, so you just have to, believe in yourself, write everything down, just keep going. And then you can edit as much as you want. And then you just, just keep going. Cause they say so many of these, like J.K. Rowling, she got turned down. I think somebody said like 60 times before somebody finally, thought her work was, worthy of taking a chance on, I think, Stephen King had a hard time getting started too. So, you just have to keep going, and the other thing too, is just look at it as, you wrote a story, you wrote something. Like so many people have an idea, but they don't go through and write the book. You wrote a book, you wrote something, be proud of that.
Exactly. And where can people follow you? Is there a website that you can mention?
Yeah,
people
I
can
do. I
follow
have a
you?
website, berviadams.com. I have a blog, same thing, berviadams.com. I have Facebook, Bervi Adams. So just look for Bervi Adams, and there I am. So, yeah, and I had a blog years ago, on was more of like a travel blog. So that's kind of where, all the different cities, the Moscow and then the Paris, because I love Paris, and then the New Orleans, that's a little bit of an homage to Anne Rice because, she's from New Orleans, so that was a little bit of an homage to her, I think, not really realizing it. And then going out to Napa, was just a place that I really love. So I think that's, so just, tune into where you're at, use your stuff,
Thank you. And Bervi, it's been a pleasure. And
No.
we definitely would love to have you back, especially when Night Tasting 2 comes out. Everybody, make sure you follow her and check out her website. And thank you for joining us on Imaginative Visions Journeys.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Bye-bye
Thank
now.
you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for watching this episode of Imaginative Visions Journeys. And I just have to mention, you can pick up Night Tasting on Amazon and is available on Barnes & Nobles. And for more on Bervi Adams, you can check out berviadams.com, BERVI Adams.com. Later days, and thank you for watching.
Thank you for joining us for Imaginative Visions Journeys. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from Imaginative Visions, you can visit imaginativevisions.com.